Hi everyone, I'm Zoya Hasan. I'm here today with Courtney Toll, an under 30 lister and the co-founder of Nori. Courtney, so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so cool to be in this office. It's honestly like a dream come true, so thanks for hosting.
Of course. So Courtney, you've built this incredible clothing care company that hit profitability last year, and it all kind of started with your hero product, the Nori Press. And I would describe Nori Press almost like this high-tech steamer iron that's kind of like a straightener. And you've sold like 100,000 of these, over 100,000 of these already. So tell me, how did you get the idea for the Nori Press? And what prompted you to start your own business?
Yeah. Well, honestly, this is something that very much stemmed from a personal pain point. I had just started my career in New York City. I was living in a very cramped New York apartment, and I'd wake up in the morning wanting to make a strong first impression, put on a good outfit, and I didn't have this space for an ironing board. I didn't have the time to deal with this inefficient steamer I had from Bed Bath & Beyond, and I definitely couldn't afford dry cleaning. So I would wake up in the morning and try like every DIY hack. So shower steam and the hair straightener hack, which I'll bring up again later. But basically this put a spotlight on a really big market that is ironing and steaming that had failed to see any real meaningful innovation since the introduction of the steamer in the 1980s. And so that was sort of enough of a catalyst to send us on this 2+ year product development and customer discovery journey to create a better, more modernized way to remove wrinkles from your clothing that eventually ended up our hero product, the Nori Press.
And how old were you when you first started the company?
So I left my job when I was, I believe, 24. I worked for about a year on the side. I had raised some money before I ever left my job, and I believe I was 25 when the company actually launched.
And you know, at the heart of it, this is a hardware company.
Yeah.
You were recognized on our manufacturing industry list, and I think manufacturing is an industry that's even more so male-dominated than others. So being a 25-year-old woman, even your co-founder, she's a young woman, you both are under 30, both are kind of trying to break into this, industry. What was that journey like, especially in terms of fundraising? What was it like trying to fundraise for a hardware company?
Incredibly difficult. I remember a founder sent me this meme of someone trying to throw a football and the receiver was running in the opposite direction. And I think that is sort of a metaphor for what it's like fundraising for hardware. And then when you look at an industry that is primarily dominated by men, I think over 70% of hardware founders are male. That only becomes more difficult when you're fundraising as a woman. But I think that we really took this one step at a time. It's one thing to try and fundraise with the promise that you're going right to market with that capital. It's another thing to fundraise to say, I have this idea, this is why I think it's going to work, and this is what I think is required to get to the next tangible stage. In our case, that was a prototype of the product. So we started with a small family and friends round, and that got us through some significant product development work. And then we went through that and sort of got an idea that this was a product people were excited about and that we wanted to take to market. And it was time to raise this additional $1 million to take us to launch. And it just so happened that I was fundraising during COVID. Okay. And so we're Zooming, we're sitting in our sweatpants, and I'm talking about the necessity of this iron of the future. And so it was a real uphill climb. But all in, we have raised just under $5 million to date. It's been sort of staggered through a few different rounds. It was primarily angels for quite some time, now some VC players involved as well. But I think that one of the best things about sometimes having difficulty fundraising is that it forces you to take a really long and hard look at your finances and start to prioritize profitability from day one. So even if we weren't on there from day one, we got there fairly quickly.
Yeah, and is $5 million what you wanted to raise, or would you have raised more? Last year, women in venture capital took home just about 2% of all capital. Yeah. So, it's hard out there. So did you want to raise more but kind of knew the limitations set on women in this industry, or was that exactly what you were gunning for?
We definitely would have raised more. just this most recent round, we ended our first full year of business, 2022, at $5 million in sales. We had a killer year, and I went out with what I thought was a super compelling story, and it was really, really difficult. Obviously, there's a conversation that's shifting rapidly in consumer VC, but anyways, we were able to close kind of what was necessary to move forward with the business. I think we set out for 3 to 5 million, ended up closing around 2.5. And again, prioritizing profitability has allowed us to grow without that big infusion of capital.
Yeah, and you know what's most interesting to me about Nori is how the team is so small. And it's just you and your co-founder. You hired your first full-time employee just last month.
Exactly.
So it's just 3 of you now, and for the first 2 years it was just 2 of you.
Yeah.
And you reached profitability. You're projecting 10 million in revenue by the end of this year. That's all very impressive. But was it, from the get-go you decided that I'm not going to hire a team, or was that something that just kind of happened with time?
Again, I think it somewhat happened with time, but it has worked to our advantage yet again. There's a lot of luck in here as well, but really, we just started moving so quickly. I think that we launched with this one hero product that is the Nori Press, the handheld steam iron, and it started to do really, really well from a paid acquisition standpoint. And so we were able to scale it pretty quickly just as a direct-to-consumer brand. But we were running so quickly that I don't think we necessarily took the time to take a breath and say, whoa, we could use some additional support. We started to outsource pretty early on, so we do have a number of agency partners. But that's also allowed us to be fairly agile with our talent, where we make sure we're staffing the right agencies if something isn't working. I think it's often easier to pivot when you're outsourced versus internal. But as we sort of crossed the finish line of 2022, we started to realize that in 2023 we wanted to expand the team. And when we audited all of the different practices within our business, organic acquisition is something that I think we'd really, really like to invest in on an ongoing basis. And that is so heavily social media and community based, how we engage our existing customers, how we engage new customers, but all through sort of an earned conversation rather than paying for it in the more traditional way.
So would you say that kind of the secret behind Nori's success is in the marketing, in the social media?
Yes, I think that product market fit cannot be undervalued. There was probably a craze where for a while I think people thought you could take a category or a product and let's put it online and rebrand it and that will work. And honestly, I think it did work sometimes, but there's so much content out there now. There's so many brands out there now that I think innovation is so valuable. And so I think the fact that Nori introduced true patented technology into, like I said, a space that hadn't really seen much innovation, that worked to our benefit almost out of the gate from a marketing perspective. So it got a lot of press attention. It was one of Oprah's favorite things. It was in Forbes, and as well started to do really well from a Facebook and Instagram marketing standpoint, because there was all these new features and value adds that we could talk about because there was new technology, that we started to be profitable on first sale from day one, and then eventually that profitability led us to bottom line.
Amazing. And on social media, what is your strategy when it comes to creating content?
I think it's really showing the product. One thing that works to our advantage is that we have this really demonstrative product. So when you use the Nori Press, you're watching wrinkles disappear, which is so satisfying. And that seems to do quite well from a conversion standpoint. But I think it's also communicating not only like what's great about this product, but what you're going to gain from it. So I went back to, the pain point that I started with. I'm saving time, I'm saving money, I'm saving space. And I feel better about myself because I'm confident that I'm wearing a wrinkle-free garment. And so communicating, I think, those value adds is just as important as the true innovation.
Yeah, and I can totally relate. I have that same struggle with my old steamer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, and have you taken advantage of the new features on social media where you can buy as you're scrolling through Instagram or TikTok?
We have. I mean, there's an unbelievable amount of new opportunities popping up for brands. I think TikTok is definitely a huge one. But specific to Facebook and Instagram, we've even seen like a huge uptick in conversions on Facebook and Instagram shop. I think that that's where a lot of decisions are being made in terms of purchases. So if you're already advertising there, allowing the purchase to happen there as well is super advantageous.
Amazing. And I think it's almost rare to see Facebook being a source for like a Gen Z kind of company now, but that's very exciting to know. I want to talk a little bit about your partners and, you know, the people that sell Nori. So you do drop ship with Nordstrom and Bloomingdale's. And those are kind of, I would say, like luxury stores, retail stores. Was that your intention to kind of have your product be seen as this more luxury item as opposed to putting it on shelves in Walmart or Target?
Absolutely. So at our core, our mission is really based in this idea of increasing the longevity of your wardrobe and in turn, building a wardrobe that can last you a lifetime, investing in nicer pieces and then caring for them on an ongoing basis. And I think that all of that involves an investment in your wardrobe and in the tools that you're using to take care of them. So the ironing and steaming market was a really interesting one because it was super fragmented in terms of price. There was the kind of budget buys, the $20 to $40 that were all over Amazon and big box retailers. And then there was the really, really expensive industrial grade steamers and presses that could be upwards of $1,000. So we wanted to land at a space where we were conveying a certain amount of value and true innovation and improvement to technology, but also make it accessible for someone to purchase anywhere from 23-year-olds and up. And so that said, I think that was our price strategy, and then our distribution strategy sort of fell in tow. Direct to consumer, we were the first ever digitally native. This just wasn't a product or category that lived online, so Nori was really the first to live there. And then when we started to think about wholesale, you're exactly right. We wanted to find wholesalers that were aligned with where our consumers were shopping and where they were investing in a certain wardrobe that they wanted to care for. And so now we're partnered, like you said, with Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, Crate & Barrel, the Container Store, Williams-Sonoma, and hopefully that list is growing.
And you're on shelves at the Container Store, right?
We're on shelves at the Container Store, which was a huge thing for us. I think the Container Store is a really fun one because it's so naturally aligned with our category. But the Container Store is one, too, that's great because they're not as seasonal. A lot of these rely so heavily on Q4. The Container Store is one that does these sort of big sell-through opportunities all year long. New Year, New You initiatives, back to school initiatives, spring cleaning initiatives, and that allows for this more consistent revenue that I think can counteract a more D2C brand seasonality curve.
And as of right now, is most of your revenue coming in from that direct-to-consumer?
It is. Between direct-to-consumer and Amazon, we're still over 90% online.
Amazing. And I want to talk a bit about being a young founder and a first-time founder and kind of launching into the business space. How did you know what to do?
It's such a good question, and I sometimes take a step back and questioning how we got to where we are. But so much of it, I think, boils down to people. I started my career at a job where I was doing a lot of cold calling, and I think that I got really comfortable with reaching out to people blindly. So I would say that we were able to recruit experts and advisors that spent a lot of time with us and sort of guided us through the most important parts of starting a business. If there's a piece of advice that I could pass on, I would say don't be hesitant to reach out to other founders or experts in a field to ask for advice. If they have seen entrepreneurial success, my guess is someone has helped them along the way. But do so thoughtfully. I would spend hours crafting these cold emails. I would listen to podcasts on a founder, research their favorite foods or where they live so I could make small little notes within that cold outreach email. And I had a really great success rate with that. And I recruited experts and advisors like Dave Heath from Bombas. I remember I was able to talk with Emily Weiss from Glossier. You just can't discount mentorship, and I think paired with ambition, but also a young age, having that expertise on your side is really helpful.
And who was that first person who responded to your cold emails or cold calls? Do you remember?
It's such a good question. Emily Weiss was one of my earlier ones, and my guess is she wouldn't remember it, but I thought it was like the coolest thing in the world that someone that had seen so much success was willing to hear my idea. As I got further into it, I think I started to have a little bit more reputability to what I was saying, and people were more willing to truly get involved and eventually, in many cases, invest. So all in, it ended up working out, but there was definitely a lot of no's along the way.
Yeah. And did you always imagine that you'd become an entrepreneur?
No, I didn't at all, which is funny. I'm actually fairly risk averse. I am more comfortable on the beaten path, but I think that we just happened to stumble upon an idea that I was really, really passionate about. And I'm so grateful that we saw it through, because I truly believe there's no learning curve or experience like that is offered by entrepreneurship.
And what's in store for Nori in this upcoming year? What are you most excited about?
So quite a bit. We have a bunch of new product launches coming up within the clothing care space that we're so excited about. Co-branded partnerships are huge for us, where we partner with other brands and talent to introduce Nori to a new audience. So a few of those planned. And then, of course, some new retail launches. So hopefully all good things.
And you know, when you say clothing care company, which is also how I described you, but I would like to know, do you feel like you fall more into retail, or do you feel like you fall more into manufacturing? Like, what do you think personally?
That's a good question. I don't know that we perfectly fall into any category, but I think that is the beauty of this. One of the things that we realized about our market and our product specifically when we were trying to innovate was that people didn't have really any attachment to an iron or steamer or to a fabric shaver or some of the other products that we're innovating within, whereas they did to things like their suitcase or their toothbrush, other products that had an innovative player. And so I think that we're trying to ensure that even though we're innovating within hardware, probably not the most glamorous space, that this is something that is really beautiful and really branded and something that people are proud to own and show off. And so it's funny enough, like I think I talk about us almost like we're a beauty product more than anything. But traditionally, I would say that we're more of an e-com retailer.
And I have to ask, what does Nori stand for?
I'm glad you asked. It is iron spelled backwards.
Oh, I should have put that together.
No, honestly, most people don't. So it's fun to tell people when they figure it out.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited to have you here. But my last question for you, I know you gave us a piece of advice, but specifically to the women, young women who are trying to break into an industry like this, hardware maybe, what is your best piece of advice for them?
I think it is to get started. So many people have great ideas, but it's terrifying to get started. And I'm risk averse. I was terrified to get started. But think about activities and de-risking. What is the next tangible step I can take to get this one step further and one step closer to market? And I think that is the best way that you can see through an idea and potentially stop yourself before too much has been put into it. But if you have an idea and you feel passionate about it for X, Y, and Z reasons, especially when you're young, you don't have the commitments that you have later in life. And at the very, very worst, you will have learned more than you could possibly imagine. And reach out to me. Cold call me. I'll answer.
I love that. That's great advice. Thank you so much, Courtney.
Thank you for having me.